Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Tracy, and this is an upcycling channel where we create clothes, purses, and accessories. Most of the items that I use are thrifted, but I know a lot of you are taking items from your own closet and creating a one-of-a-kind dream wardrobe, and I love that so much. We're just having fun here. I do my best to give you exact detail, best description that I can of what I'm creating, but your items are going to be different than mine. There are no patterns, no rules, which gives lots of room for you to add your own personal style and your own creativity. And today I want to make a poncho or cape. And I recently thrifted this flannel shirt. It's a men's large. I love the color, those fall colors. And, well, before I go into the tablecloth that I have for it, this can be anything that you want. This could be a hooded sweatshirt. It could be a graphic t-shirt, a sweater, and maybe instead of a tablecloth, add a crochet blanket. It could be a jean jacket, adding denim. Just keep an open mind because there's lots you can do with this. When I found this, knew I wanted to make a poncho with it. And I looked for a lightweight blanket at the thrift store. I couldn't really find one, but what I did find was this tablecloth. Now, it's a stripe, and it's kind of a nice, little over medium weight cotton. So that is what I'm going to use. How fun are those patterns together to make the poncho? Let's get going. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is cut off part of this flannel. So I'm going to take my yardstick, and there is a seam right here. So I'm going up to the top of that seam and to the right of it into the shirt, not the sleeve side. I'm going to lay my yardstick down, and I want to draw a straight line. Now, flannel, this plaid is nice because I can just eyeball this with the straight lines in the shirt. So I am just going to take my tailor's chalk and draw a nice straight line. And I already did the same on this side. Now I'm just going to cut along that line. This one I already removed. Oop. And get this one cut off. Now I don't want this collar on here. So I'm just going to lift it up, and there's a band right here, right above that kind of thick band of fabric there. I am going to cut that collar off. I'm not cutting into that seam. I don't want things to start falling apart, but I will just get that completely cut off. Okay, this is one of the sleeves that I cut off. And now I want to measure this. I like the length of the sleeve where it hit me. So I'm going to use that as my reference point here. So I'm going to the top with my measuring tape to the bottom of the sleeve, and I get 24 inches. And I'm just going to jot that number down because I'll need to know about how wide I want that when I start cutting my tablecloth. Okay. So my tablecloth is an oval, and it's approximately 78 by 58. Now I'm going to hold it up the long way. It's the longest from the top to bottom. And I'm just going to fold it in half and lay it on my table. And I'll make sure it's folded nicer once I get it laid on my table. Okay, so now I have this folded in half laying on my table. Here's the folded end, and I made sure these were nice and lined up down here. I even had to press it a little because it was curled up. Now, I'm going to go back to that 24 inches that I jotted down, the length of that sleeve, and that's where I'm going to use that number. I'm going to go to each side of this tablecloth, I'll start here, put my yardstick at the very edge, measure over 24 inches, and make a mark. And then I'm going to do it on the opposite side. This will work with a square as well. You don't have to have an oval. So from the edge to here, I'm marking 24 inches. Now, I got it made here because I have stripes and I can just cut a straight line following where I marked, follow a stripe all the way down. And I'm going to cut and do the same on this side. Now, if you have a busy pattern or a plain and you don't have a stripe to follow, you can lay your yardstick here and eyeball it. That's what I would do. Just make it fairly straight. Or if you want to be super precise, maybe a T-square or something, lay that down along this edge, make a straight line. But this is what I have, and I am now going to cut the two sides off. Okay, now I have my two sides cut. The middle part, I'll fold up, set on my shelf of extra fabrics because I'm only going to need these two pieces. Okay, sorry, I have to have this kind of sideways so I can see what I'm doing here. But here are the tablecloth pieces I cut, and here's the flannel. And I just sort of set it in between these two pieces so that I can get a sense of how I'm going to add some more flannel to equal it with the bottom of these tablecloth pieces. But before I do that, this is curved at the bottom. I don't want to be trying to sew on a curve. So I'm going to cut that straight across to make it nice and easy for me to add another piece of fabric. Now, again, I have lined these up nicely, and I have plaid, so I have a nice straight line right here. I don't have to do any measuring. I will just follow one of these straight lines all the way across. Now I have it nice and straight at the bottom. Now I'm going to take my yardstick and I'm going to measure how far it is from the bottom of this flannel shirt to the bottom of this piece right here, and hope that my other flannel is large enough. But okay, we just play things by ear. If it's not, we'll adjust. I'm going to measure from here to here, and I get 16 inches. Here's the other flannel shirt I'm going to use to add to the bottom of the original flannel. Now, I just measured 16 inches. Now, this is a little shorter in front and a little longer in back. I'm going to the shortest in the front here, and I'm going to measure up 16 inches, and I'm just going to make a mark. Now, again, I have a nice pattern here where I don't have to measure up 16 inches all the way. I can just follow this little stripe across. Okay, here's the original flannel that we cut first. And it is not solid all the way around. So I can't just sew this all the way around. I have to cut this into sections to add it to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is take either side, and I'm just going to sort of use this short section to measure how much I need. And so I'm going to go to that bottom of this flannel. I'm just going to lay it over top here. And I see that it stops this piece right here. I made a little mark, and I am going to cut that off, just again following one of my plaid lines here. And now I have a piece to sew on to the bottom. It's actually the bottom right of that flannel. See, and then it extends like that. Now I have to go to the opposite side, find that little piece, lay it on the opposite side of my flannel shirt here. Make a little mark and cut that one off as well. Okay, now I have these two pieces cut for the front, but when you open it up, you have a whole another long piece here. And I just need to cut one for that area using that same flannel that we cut. Now I'm going to fold this in half to find the center. And I can fold that in half as well, or just eyeball it. So that's about the center. I'm just going to open that back up and use, oh, that's kind of crooked here. Straighten out this line so I have a clean edge here. Okay. So now I just want to mark this shirt over here hits about here, and over here hits about here. And now I just need to cut that off. I'd be doing a lot more measuring if I didn't have these awesome plaid and stripe patterns. Now I need to sew these on. And on this, I'm doing seams on the outside. I will have a frayed detail where these are attached, and on the inside it'll be nice and clean. Now, if you want your seams on the inside, put right sides together. Finish your seams however you want. Serge them or whatever, but I am not finishing my seams. I'm just having raw edges on the outside. So I open this up, and this is the wrong side. That's the inside. Now I'm going to take the wrong side of this piece and lay it over top of that largest center, and I'm going to pin it on. Okay, once I have this pinned, I'm going to one of the front flaps here, and I'm going to take my extra piece, wrong sides together, and pin that on as well. Okay, now I have all three of my pieces pinned on. I'm just going to go to my machine and simply sew each one at the bottom here. I'm just going to go along the edge, and I'm going to use orange thread and a fairly small straight stitch, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll go over the side, the middle, and the opposite side. Okay, so this is what we have so far. It's open on the sides. I have that longer plaid piece attached in the back, and the two smaller ones attached in the front. And now I want to attach that tablecloth piece on each side, and I will have it shorter in front. I'm going to do a high-low design where it's longer in back, curved and shorter in front, because I feel I want it long in the back, but I feel if it's long in the front as well, it's going to swallow me up because I'm not very tall. But I need to add these first. So I'll show you how I do it. Okay, I'm just straightening up my flannel shirt here. Now, what I want to do to add those sleeves is start with one side at a time, and I'm going to start, here are the buttons, the side closest to me. I'm just going to lift this up and over. So now I have a really long piece from here all the way down to here. And I'm just going to be working on this edge. Now here is my folded tablecloth half circle-ish. And I want to put right sides together or wrong sides together and have the seams on the outside. This is the right side I'm looking at right now. I'm going to open this up And now I'm looking at the wrong side. And I am just going to, actually, I think I can just flip this over and line it up with the edge of my flannel. And then I'm going to pin, get that all straightened up and pin all along the side here. Okay, now I have this side all pinned, and I came to the opposite side of the flannel and lifted this piece all the way over above it. And I'm going to take my tablecloth, open it up, put wrong sides together, and pin this one from top to bottom as well. So this is just pinned, but I wanted to give you a better visual of what it's looking like right now. I just basically pinned the raw edge of that tablecloth to the front and back of each side. And now I'm just going to my machine and sew these on. I'll start at the edge, the bottom of one side, doesn't matter which I start with, and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew these completely on. Okay, here's what it's looking like so far. So fun and cozy already. I need to decide, I still want to cut a high-low shape, and I need to decide how high I want the shortest point to be. And I stuck a pin, I looked in the mirror and kind of played with it. I stuck a pin 8 inches above the bottom. That's where I want mine. And I'm keeping in mind, I'm adding about 2 inches of green lace at the trim when I'm all done. So I'm cutting 8 inches up the center, and I'll show you how I cut the curve. Now I have this laid back out on my table, the front side facing up. Now I did have my pin here, 8 inches above the bottom. So I'm just marking 8 inches so that I can remove that pin. And then I decided I want my curve, what shape do I want it? I want it to go, I'm only measuring on the stripe part right now. I'm going from that seam over 7 inches. So I want my curve to go 7 inches, 8 inches up, back down. I'm going to measure over here 7 inches as well. Now I am just going to freehand that curve. These don't need to be lined up because I'm only cutting the front, so it doesn't matter what the back is doing right now. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of line up those 3 dashes you just made to create a curve. And then I'm going to cut that out. Now each side where I cut has a little, kind of a weird little point right here. I'm just going to smooth that out and blend it into my arch. Okay, I just want to show you quick what it's looking like. The front is shorter, it's right here, and curves down, and longer in the back. And now I am going to pull out some scraps of denim, and I want to create a denim vines and flowers all around it. So that'll be fun. Okay, basket of denim scraps. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is cut some strips. Now, this is sort of a prototype of the sort of flower I'm going to make. They're not going to be this big. I was just kind of playing with it to see if my idea was going to work. So what I'm creating now are strips of fabric that are going to be these petals here. And so I want a lighter fabric, or denim. This is actually the darker side, and on the back's usually lighter. I'm going with the lighter, and I'm taking my electric scissors. I have pretty bad tendonitis from all my years of cutting, and when I have a lot of cutting like this to do, these come in super handy. Now, I am not measuring these. These are approximately 2 inches wide, and they're all different lengths because these are just scraps of fabric. I can keep adding pieces. It doesn't have to be one long continuous piece. I will have to add to it. So all I'm doing right now is cutting 2-inch strips, a bunch of them. Okay, and so my prototype, my sloppy prototype, I will do a neater job on the actual flowers, has a round base in the back, which I sewed all these petals on. And what I'm using for a pattern, I'm using 2 different sizes because I want 2 different size flowers on my poncho. And I'm using a cereal bowl, which is, mine is 6 1/4 inches across. And I'm using a martini glass, which is 4 1/4 inches across. And I'm just going to trace out, I don't know how many flowers I want at this point. I certainly will let you know how many I do, but I will just probably lay my poncho down and start throwing the flowers on there to give me an idea of how many I want. But I know I want a bunch, so I am just going to start making them. So I just trace the bowl. I'm going to trace the martini glass and cut them out. Okay, so now I want to make all the petals of the flower. Now on this one, do you see when I lift up the last petal, there's that original circle like this that I started with? I am going to start sewing about maybe 3/4 of an inch inside that circle, because this will be what I actually sew on to the poncho, is this circle. So I will be sewing my first set of petals inside, so I have plenty of room here to sew. Okay, I'll actually be doing all of this at my sewing machine. I will use a coordinating thread, and I am just going to lay one of these pieces. I'll take them all with me. I don't know how many I'm going to need. I will lay this to where it overlaps that circle. I don't want to see the edge of that circle, but I want to be in far enough where I can sew that little lip onto my poncho. So I will just go to my machine, and I'll take you with me. I'll do almost a whole flower with you. And I'm going to stick my needle in my sewing machine about right there. And I am just going to sew this around and around the edge. And I will do a little pinch pleating about like that as I go. You can do as much. The more you do, the more like a flower it will probably look. But I don't like taking all that time sometimes. It's not about those kind of details. It will definitely be representative of a flower. You can do it however you want. And if I run out, I will just add another piece, keep pleating. And now I'm overlapping this piece. And I just want the edge to either line up with it or barely overlap. And just keep pleating and all the way around, coming in tighter and tighter until I'm in the center. Okay, so this one was the cereal bowl size. Now on the martini glass size, I think I'm going to make my strips maybe only 1.5 inches. Okay, done sewing the flowers for now. I ended up with 8 big ones and 6 small ones. If I need more, I'll make more. Okay, now I want to gather some strips for the vines. And I cut a bunch of these strips. They range probably 3/4 of an inch wide to 1 1/4. And some are real wavy, kind of like a vine would be. Some are long, some are short. I'm just using what I have in my stash and not doing any measuring, just cutting. Now I want to just cut out some leaves. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking a pair of jeans. There's the right side, there's the inside. And I'm using that seam for sort of the center here to give the leaves a little bit of dimension or detail. And I am just cutting these out. Now mine average about 3 inches long and 2 inches wide. You can cut out a pattern out of a piece of paper and do it if you want, but I am just cutting. So I'm just starting at the bottom of the seam and making a leaf shape. And I don't know how many I have here, just a nice little pile. Okay, so before I add the leaves and the vines, I decided I wanted to add a few patches. And I'm going to lay this out on my table so you can see more clearly what I used and where I put them. I have one more patch to go. Okay, I just added a few patches for background interest, not a ton. Now, I used mainly the fabrics that I've already been using on the shawl. In addition to that, I had this pillow sham that I thrifted not too long ago. I think this is the 3rd project I've used it on now. I just love the colors. It's kind of a hippie pattern. And I put a hippie pattern here, and I will measure a couple of these for you, but I'm not going to bore you and measure everything. You just do what you want. Now, this patch is about 10 by 7. I did a flannel here, more hippie stripe. Now this one, I still need to sew. It's only pinned, and it is about 8 by 7. And how I pinned all these on is I just stuck a piece of cardboard underneath so that when I pinned, I didn't catch the other side of the shawl. And I put a hippie patch here. Now on the opposite side, on the back, I did sort of a long rectangle down here, a long rectangle here over top of a flannel, little hippie pattern, a big giant one right here, and a little stripe right there. Now these are all sewn on, and I still need to sew on this one. And all I'm going to do is, I'm using orange thread on all these patches. I'm just going to put it back into my machine, stay very close to the edge with a straight stitch, and get that sewn on. Okay, so now I'm ready to prep my shawl, poncho, for the flowers and vines. And now this is just going to take creativity and a little bit of artistry. It's really hard to say exactly what to do because it's kind of a freehand sketching we have to do. Now I am only doing the flowers towards the bottom perimeter on the front and the back. So I'm going to open this up, and here are some buttonholes right here. Here's the bottom perimeter. The only rule I'm kind of giving myself for this is, I want to have an imaginary approximate 6-inch border along the bottom where I don't draw the vines. I went the whole thing up about 6 inches. So now I'm just going to take some tailor's chalk. I don't know what color is going to show up best. Here's white. Here's blue. I think maybe the white. So I am just going to make squiggles, vines. Maybe I'll start there, come down here, and come close to the buttons. And then maybe I'll come over here, start one. So I'm basically going to have 2 rows of vines that intersect with one another throughout the piece here. Now I went closer than 6 inches, but you know, vines aren't exact. Now I'm coming right up over this patch. And that's what I'll keep doing. I'll just keep making squigglies all the way around. And then I'll make another squiggly that intersects with it. Okay, I have my squigglies all drawn. Now what I want to do, I want to use, these are the vine pieces that I cut. I'm going to try to keep the lighter side facing up. I think that'll be more of a contrast with these darker colors. And I'll just set up my machine and do this. And like maybe this one has a blunt end. I'll start, maybe make a point with it, lay it down in my machine. And I am just going to sew over top of it. I'm going to use a coordinating thread. And here's my line. And I'm just going to follow it around. Now and then I may twist it and keep sewing just so that we have a little dimension. And then when I get to one piece, let's say this is the end of my piece, I will probably stop about here so that we have a little dangly. And then I'll take my next piece and let that maybe dangle a little bit and start sewing. And I'm just going to use a straight stitch and follow. I'm going to do one squiggle at a time. And then I'm going to come back and do the one that I intersected. I know this isn't super clear, but this is just kind of artsy stuff. You just do whatever you want. So the next one, when I'm all done with that one, we'll just start sort of like that. Maybe do a little twisty. Just play with it and have fun. Okay, I have the vines all done. That's what they look like on the front and on the back. Now what I want to do is pin the big flowers on. And so I'm going to lay it out on my table. Just kind of eyeball it and place the flowers where I want them. Okay, this is the front. I have it kind of sideways again. I put 4 flowers in front, and now I'm just going to stick a few pins in them to hold them in place where I want them. Now I have it turned over on the back, and this is where I place them. And I'm going to get those pinned on. Okay, now it's just time to sew the flowers on. And remember that little lip we talked about earlier? That's where I'm going to sew and just do a straight stitch, stay fairly close to the edge all the way around till I get all 8 flowers sewn on. Okay, now the flowers are all done. So fun. Now I want to lay it back out on my table, and I'm going to take the little flowers and the leaves and pin them all around, just fill in between these big flowers. Now these leaves, I'm just sticking one pin right in the middle. And then the little flowers, I'll put like 3 pins in to keep them where I want them. Okay, I have all the little flowers and the leaves pinned on. And I made a few more flowers and cut out a few more leaves. And now I have to sew them all on. And, you know, just stay close to the edge, whatever is what I did with the big flowers. Well, I'm going to show you a little cheat that I used to use when I sold, because if I spent more than one day making something, I didn't make as much money. I tried to only spend one day, and a lot of times I'd make 2 or 3 things, smaller things in a day, but I didn't make as much money if I spent 2-3 days on one project. So I use this little cheat that I'm going to show you. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use green thread, and I'm going to set my machine on my largest zigzag stitch. And I'm going to load up a couple bobbins because this will take a lot of thread. But hopefully I won't have to take this in and out of the machine and fight these little details. What I'm going to do is put this in my machine, start maybe about right here, and I'm going to sew straight across that flower. Now this is the bottom of the shirt or poncho. So if I sew straight in the middle, it might flop over too much. So I'm going to go slightly above the middle on the flowers. And then I'm going to just take my machine, go find this flower or this leaf, come up, come around, come get this one. Where's the next one? Here, just come around. And this is green zigzag that's going on the poncho. Hopefully it will just be another cute detail. And I am just going to follow these all around, and I don't want to take this out of my machine at all. I'm just going to twist and find all, and then the leaves, I'll just sew straight down the middle with my zigzag. Go find the next. Maybe come up through here, find the next one. And that will be so much quicker. Now, these flowers will flap a little bit and be a little bit dimensional, you know, and these might curl up a little bit, but that's okay. That just gives me dimension. It will still, hopefully, represent flowers and leaves. But I don't really have a choice. I can't spend 2 days on this. I mean, I could. But back when I sold, I would have hardly made any money if I spent 3 days on this. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, all the denim is sewn on now. And the last thing I want to sew on this is some green lace just to finish the edges. Okay, so I have some vintage lace, and I dyed it with dark green Rit dye. I used half a bottle, and I'm not going to go through all the steps. I dyed it in my washer, but I have lots of tutorials on step-by-step how you do that. And I'm going to link one down in my description. And on that video, if you just fast forward to the end, that's where I typically dye things. So I'll put that link and I'll show you how I cut these up, sew them on. Okay, so I want mine to be 2 to 3 inches wide. Now this is like a collar or something. That's just perfectly fine. I'm going to take Now this is more of a table runner, and I am just going to cut it 2 to 3 inches wide. And I'm going to keep doing that with all the borders until I think I have enough to go all the way around the perimeter. Okay, I think I have enough to get me started. I could always cut more. Now I'm going to start at one end. This one is the end with the buttons down at the bottom. And I am just going to overlap this about 1/2 inch, use a zigzag stitch, and I'll just take this pile to my sewing machine and I'll just add as I go. I won't do any pinning and just sew. Now this one, I won't be making ruffles. I don't want this real ruffly at the bottom. I'm just going to sew them straight across. Okay, all done sewing. Now I am just going to wash it and dry it, put it on a gentle cycle in cold water, tumble dry, and I'll come back wearing it. And I'm also going to weigh it because it did get a little heavy. I'll let you know what it weighs. Okay, here it is all finished. So fun, cozy. I had to trim off quite a bit of extra fraying. Everything is frayed really cute now, but there was some excess. It weighs 3 pounds, 8 ounces. So fun. And I hope this video gave you some food for thought. If this poncho isn't your thing, what about that original poncho technique where we added these sleeves? You could do that to a lacy top and add like vintage tablecloth or lacy curtains. Or what if you found like a pink flannel and a floral little blanket or floral flannel sheets? You could, okay, so maybe you don't want to deal with the work of all these flowers. This original with just the patches would be really cute by itself. But if you added some butterfly applique and some blanket fringe to the trim, maybe you like the denim flowers and nothing else, this in a smaller version would be really cute in a contrasting denim on a jean jacket, a jean skirt, or just some jeans. All right, I thank you so much for watching. I'm going to slow it down and bring it in a little closer. So